Have you ever wondered what truly happens when you stop showing up for someone, when you vanish? Without warning, without explanation, without a single word, not as revenge, not as a game, but as a quiet act of self-respect. What do they feel in your absence? What do they begin to see when the comfort you once gave is no longer there? In a world full of noise, your silence becomes a message. And for the one who once took you for granted, that message grows louder with each passing day. They thought you'd always be there, but now your absence is teaching them what your presence never could. In this video, we'll explore the unseen emotional journey people go through when you disappear from their lives, the shock, the void, the games, the regret, and finally, the realization of what they lost. If you've ever walked away from someone who made you feel like an option, or if you're standing at the edge, unsure whether to let go, this is for you. Take a breath. Stay with me until the very end. And if you value quiet strength and deep clarity, don't forget to subscribe. You're exactly where you need to be. Part 1, the quiet sting of rejection. There's a unique kind of pain that comes when someone who thought you'd always be there suddenly realizes you're not. No fight, no goodbye, just gone. When you disappear without explanation, it hits harder than any argument could, not because of the drama, but because of what your absence symbolizes: the end of tolerance, the quiet decision that enough is enough. Most people expect a warning, a signal, maybe a plea for attention. But when none of that comes, when you simply walk away without a word, what they feel isn't just confusion, it's rejection. And not the surface kind, but the kind that cuts deep. It shakes the very foundation of how they viewed the relationship, and more importantly, how they viewed you. You see, when someone gets too comfortable with your presence, they stop valuing it. You become part of the background, always there, always giving, always showing up. And because you never made a fuss, they assumed you never would, but when you vanish, they're forced to confront a truth they never saw coming. Your silence is louder than their expectations. This is the first sting, the realization that they no longer have access to you. They scroll through old messages, not for closure, but for confirmation. Did they miss something? Were there signs, but you gave them enough signs? They just didn't care to notice. Now, your absence is teaching them what your presence never could, that you were never theirs to take for granted. Stoicism teaches us that we don't need to retaliate to reclaim our power. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is withdraw, not in anger, not to provoke, but because peace matters more than pleasing people who don't value it. Your disappearance isn't a punishment, it's clarity. And in that clarity, they feel the first real consequence of their neglect. Let them sit with it. Part 2, the void of missing you. Disappearance isn't just absence. It's the removal of energy, of warmth, of presence, of meaning. And once the initial sting of rejection settles in, what follows is something even more difficult to face: the void. This is the part they never expected to feel, because while they may have tolerated your presence without appreciation, they never truly imagined life without it. In the quiet aftermath of your absence, their world feels off balance. The coffee tastes the same, the weather's unchanged, but something's different and they can't quite name it. That's the void creeping in. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It arrives subtly, like a shadow stretching across a room that once felt full of light. They start going through their routines, but where your voice used to fill the air, now there's silence. Where your thoughtful messages used to pop up mid-afternoon, now there's stillness. And it's not just silence. They feel the absence of emotional stability, of someone who once anchored their chaos with presence, patience, and kindness. You see, in any close connection, we become part of someone's nervous system. We regulate their energy, bring calm to their storm. Remind them they matter. And when you're no longer there to do that, their body and mind feel it more than they care to admit. Maybe they'll try to distract themselves by going out more, texting someone new, diving into work, but distraction doesn't dissolve emptiness. It only delays its sting, that void. It deepens when they remember your little habits, the way you listened without judgment, the way you made space for their feelings, the way you noticed things no one else did. Suddenly, the things they once dismissed seem irreplaceable. And worse yet, they begin to wonder if they'll ever find that kind of presence again. Stoicism teaches us not to cling, not to people, not to emotions, not even to identity. But those who are not grounded in such wisdom suffer deeply when they realize they've lost something real, something sincere, something human. And you're not trying to hurt them. You've just stopped giving more than you receive. But your absence echoes louder than your words ever could. Let the silence do its work. Let the void remind them of what they failed to value. You no longer need to explain what you brought to the table. The empty seat says enough. Part 3, the storm of curiosity. When silence stretches long enough, it turns into noise inside someone's mind. After the sting of rejection and the aching void, something more restless takes hold: curiosity. But not the casual kind. This is obsessive, consuming, unsettling, because you didn't just leave, you vanished. And now they don't know where you are, what you're doing, or who you're doing it with. That unknowing becomes unbearable. See, people are rarely disturbed by the truth. They're disturbed by not knowing. And when they can't see you, can't hear from you, can't watch your life from a distance, their minds fill in the blanks. And those imagined scenarios, they're almost always worse than reality. They start scrolling, searching, checking the platforms where you used to post: Instagram, TikTok, even that old Facebook account, but you're silent. No status updates, no stories, no trace. And that silence doesn't just frustrate them, it unsettles them. They wonder, are you with someone else? Are you happier now? Have I been replaced so easily? Their imagination becomes a prison, and it's one they built themselves brick by brick when they chose to ignore your presence instead of appreciate it. They might reach out to mutual friends, drop your name in casual conversation, pretend they're indifferent, but deep down they're trying to get a glimpse of you, because now you're the mystery, and people always want what they can't understand or access. But here's the beauty of Stoicism. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to show off your healing or perform your happiness. Let your absence be quiet. Let your progress be private. You owe them nothing, and the less they know, the more they will wonder. Let their curiosity grow wild. Let it remind them what happens when someone who once gave everything finally gives nothing at all. Part 4, the mirror of self-reflection. When all the noise dies down after the sting, after the void, after the silent search, something unexpected happens. They stop looking outward and begin to turn inward. It starts with small questions. Was I too cold? Did I ignore them too often? Did I make them feel unimportant? Then the questions dig deeper, and soon they're staring into a mirror they've avoided for far too long. See, your silence has become a space they can't fill with distractions, rebound connections, or clever posts. And in that stillness, they're left alone with the one person they can't run from themselves. This is where discomfort becomes reflection. They start replaying memories, not just the good ones, the ones where they dismissed your needs, the ones where you reached out and they left you hanging, the times you gave and they took without acknowledgement. That's the cruel irony. They only begin to value your kindness once there's no one left to absorb their neglect. In Stoic thought, we're reminded that the only control we truly have is over ourselves, our actions, our choices, our responses. And now, without you there to buffer them, they must take responsibility for their part in the unraveling. No more blaming, no more excuses, just raw accountability. But here's the important part. Don't interrupt this process. Don't reach out to explain your absence. Don't try to guide them to understanding. That's not your job anymore. Let them do the work. Self-reflection is only real when it's earned through silence and consequence, not comfort. And whether they grow from it or not isn't up to you. What matters is this: your absence created the very space they needed to finally see what they refused to face when you were still standing there. Part 5, the urge to chase you. Once the self-reflection sets in, once they finally acknowledge how they pushed you away, something shifts. Regret turns into longing, and longing turns into action. They feel the urge to chase you. The silence that once empowered them now feels suffocating. And suddenly, the person who never texted back starts typing long messages. The one who ignored your calls starts calling late at night. The one who said you were too emotional now says they didn't know what they had. They'll say they miss you. They'll say they've changed. They might even apologize, not because they've grown, but because they want the comfort back, the ease, the access. But here's the Stoic truth. Just because someone misses your presence doesn't mean they deserve your return. This stage is where you must remain centered. Do not be swayed by their sudden effort. Remember the countless times you waited for that very message, that call, that acknowledgement, and it never came. Now it comes, but on your time, after your peace has been rebuilt, after your boundaries have been reset. In their desperation to win you back, they're not just trying to reconnect, they're trying to recover control. But you've outgrown that game. Let them chase. Let them wonder if it's too late. Let them feel the consequences of once believing you'd never walk away. And you keep walking not to spite them, but to honor the version of yourself who finally chose peace over permission. Part 6, the illusion of relief and the weight of regret. At first, they tell themselves a story, one that comforts their ego. Maybe it's better this way. Finally, I'm free. I don't need them anyway. This is what we call the illusion of relief. In the immediate aftermath of your disappearance, they may feel a strange sense of lightness, like they've avoided responsibility, like they've won. They might even laugh with friends, post something cryptic online, or pretend nothing has changed. But illusions don't last, because relief without growth quickly turns into regret. It begins late at night when distractions fade and no one is texting back. It deepens in quiet mornings when they instinctively check their phone and realize it's still silent, and it hits hardest when they try to replace you, only to find surface-level connections that leave them emptier than before. The people they thought could replace your presence feel shallow. The attention they sought feels meaningless. And that freedom they were celebrating, it starts to feel like loneliness wearing a mask. Stoicism reminds us true freedom is not the absence of responsibility. It is living in alignment with virtue, with awareness, with clarity. They confused escape with peace, and now they face the cost of that confusion. They remember your patience, your grounding energy, the way you brought calm without asking for credit, and slowly they begin to see you weren't the weight, you were the balance. And now that you're gone, everything feels off. But here's where your silence remains your strength. Let them feel that regret. Don't rescue them from it. Don't give them one more drop of emotional ease. They must sit with the consequences of comfort abused. Their temporary relief was never freedom. Your quiet distance, that's what real freedom looks like. Part 7, the games they play. When they feel powerless, when regret settles in and they realize you're not coming back, a new emotion takes over: desperation. But desperation doesn't always look like an apology. Often, it looks like manipulation. They begin to play games. They post pictures with someone new, not because they've moved on, but because they want you to think they have. They write vague captions about growth, peace, or moving forward, hoping you're watching. They might even mimic the things you once did together, just loud enough for you to notice. But you're not watching anymore. See, when someone feels powerless, when they've lost control, they often reach for tactics that once got your attention. But the person you used to be no longer lives here. You've evolved. You've detached. And nothing frustrates them more than that. They may try to provoke jealousy, stir curiosity, or pretend they're unaffected, but underneath it all is a simple truth: they're trying to get a reaction out of you. Because reaction means connection. Even anger would make them feel like they still matter. But you've chosen stillness. Stoicism teaches us to be unmoved by the noise of ego and manipulation, to remain steady in our values, not easily stirred by others' games. When they act out, don't retaliate. When they pretend they're fine, don't investigate. When they seek your gaze, don't look. The moment you stop reacting is the moment their power over you dissolves. Their games only work when you play. And now, you're playing a different game, the quiet one, the one where peace is your prize and silence is your move. Part 8, the crushing weight of silence. There's something heavier than anger, heavier than closure, heavier even than goodbye. It's silence pure, unbroken and intentional. At first, they underestimated it. They mistook your silence for pettiness, or maybe they thought it was temporary. But as the days passed and you said nothing, did nothing, appeared nowhere, something inside them began to unravel. Silence became unbearable. You see, most people are used to noise, used to explaining themselves, arguing, pleading, justifying. Even if the relationship was messy, the back and forth gave them a sense of control. It gave them presence. Now there's nothing. They start checking their phone more often out of habit, and then out of hope, and finally out of panic. They scroll through your name in old message threads, wondering if a single dot will appear. But it never does. That's when they feel it, the true cost of taking you for granted. Not in what you said, but in what you refuse to say now. Not in what you gave, but in what you've withdrawn entirely. Silence is clarity. It says, I'm no longer available for confusion. It says, you had your chance. Now I have my peace. In Stoic practice, silence is strength. It's the refusal to let others dictate your emotional state. And here, it becomes a mirror, one they can't look away from, one that reflects their neglect in perfect stillness. The weight of your silence will say everything that words could never express. So hold it, honor it. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them listen to what they didn't hear when you were still speaking. Part 9, the fear that brings them, crawling back. By now, they've cycled through confusion, guilt, regret, and silence has been their harshest teacher. But then comes the emotion they can no longer ignore. Fear. This isn't fear of being alone for a night or missing a familiar face. It's the deep, soul-gripping realization that they may have lost something irreplaceable, that you might have truly moved on without looking back. That fear shakes them. They begin to wonder, what if I can't fix this? What if they found someone else? What if they never come back? Suddenly, pride disappears. Ego crumbles. The games stop. What's left is panic disguised as humility-long messages, unexpected calls, maybe even a tearful apology that should have come months ago. But here's the truth. They're not crawling back because they've changed. They're crawling back because they've realized they no longer control how you feel about them, and that terrifies them, because for the first time, your absence feels permanent. But you've been healing in silence, not performing your piece, living it. You've stopped needing validation, stopped waiting for recognition. You've found wholeness in solitude, and now they feel what it's like to be on the other side of neglect. Stoicism reminds us not to react based on others' fear or urgency. Instead, act from principle, from clarity. When they come crawling back, desperate and afraid, remember you didn't leave to be chased. You left to reclaim yourself. Let them feel that fear. It's the consequence of not valuing what was once freely given. And you no longer need to answer the door. Part 10, the realization of emotional independence. This is the moment everything comes full circle, not for them, but for you. Because when you walked away, you didn't just leave a relationship, a dynamic, or a person behind you, stepped into something far more powerful, emotional independence. It may not have felt like strength at first. Maybe it felt like sadness or uncertainty, but over time, through the silence, the space, and the solitude, something inside you shifted. You began to see clearly. You realized, I don't need their validation to feel worthy. I don't need their attention to feel seen. I don't need to be chosen by them to choose myself. That's when you discovered the kind of power no one can take away from you. The kind that doesn't rely on who texts first, who apologizes, or who regrets more. It's the power of no longer depending on anyone else for your inner peace. And here's the irony, they can feel it. Even if you say nothing, even if you never respond, they know you've changed. You're no longer waiting, wondering, hoping. You're no longer emotionally tethered to what once was. You've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated inconsistency, begged for attention, or settled for being an option. Now, you operate from stillness, from clarity, from a deep, quiet confidence that comes only from walking through the fire and realizing it couldn't burn you anymore. Stoicism teaches us that true freedom lies in being governed by reason, not emotion. And emotional independence is the embodiment of that lesson. It's the unshakable calm that comes from no longer needing to control outcomes or people. So if they come back, let them find someone they can no longer reach, not out of cruelty, but out of growth, out of peace, out of truth. Because the strongest version of you doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't bend. The strongest version of you walks with purpose, lives with peace, and never forgets your value was never theirs to define.